Hello, I'm Samantha and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sewing a 1930s butterfly sleeve dress. If you could even find an original 30s butterfly sleeve dress, just the fact that it had butterfly sleeves would add an awful lot onto the price. I would say at least 100 to the price because they are really rather rare and coveted. But we can make our own. I'll be showing you in this video how to make the butterfly sleeve and attempting to give you a download of the sleeve pattern, and I'll tell you how to access that at the end of the video. And I'll be sewing the dress using an original 30s pattern and an absolutely gorgeous original 1930s fabric with a butterfly print all on theme. And I might just show you actually a little close up. This is a 30s dress that I'm wearing with a rather wonderful garden novelty print, so I'll show you that as well. And then I'll get up to the loft and start cutting out. So here's the butterfly sleeve piece. I'm tracing it out onto pattern paper because I don't want to damage the delicate tissue, and you might or might not be able to see small perforations down the centre. I'm just going to make sure that those perforations line up with do some heavy cutlery down, just to make sure those perforations line up with a line on the pattern paper. And I'm going to mark around the sleeve, and the hope is that I will then be able to make it into a PDF that then those of you who want to create this butterfly sleeve will be able to download. Remove these and cut out my butterfly sleeve. I'm going to be really good for those of you who saw my great loft tidy up. This might have just gone. Here is my pattern piece, and then I'm just going to take the original pattern piece and mark through the perforations so that I can transfer the markings onto my traced off piece. Now what I'm doing here, this is quite important for creating the sleeve, doing the short butterfly sleeve. So if we see here, the straight line that I just marked down what looks like the centre is not the straight of the grain of the material, it's a line for shirring, the shirring that creates that butterfly sleeve effect. So the straight of the grain is actually that diagonal line I just marked. So this line is where the fabric will be. I'll put the sleeve straight to the grain like that, and that longer line is where I'll do my shirring, create the butterfly effect of the sleeve. And here is my gorgeous 1930s novelty print fabric that I bought from Flower Vintage Fabrics. I'll put her Instagram details below. She has, I think, the most beautiful vintage fabrics, and it is a vintage length, so I am not going to show you. Skirt is a really full skirt, and because I think I've only got 3 meters of this gorgeous fabric, I'm not going to have enough to do all that full skirt. So what I'm going to do is cut out all the other pattern pieces that I need first, and all the fabric that's left I'll make the skirt as full as I can. So to cut out my pair of sleeves, this is the selvage edge. I'm going to fold over. Actually, the sleeve piece, once laid on the grain, it's very exact. It takes up exactly 1/2 of the fabric folded from selvage to selvage edge. You can see my straight of grain marking there, and then I'm going to measure down along that grain line just to make sure I've got the pattern piece completely on that straight of grain. Just pulling the camera back a bit so that you can see how that pattern piece is laid onto the fabric. I'm just emphasizing that because it might not be what you expect. You might expect what looks like the top of the sleeve there to be down on the straight of grain, particularly as there are markings for shirring there, but it's not. It's almost laid diagonally onto the straight of grain of the fabric. I've seen lots of people say that they feel really scared cutting into fabric, and I don't know why. I never feel scared. I always feel quite excited. I always feel like it's the start of your piece of flat fabric becoming your three-dimensional dress. And there we are, the butterfly sleeves cut out. And for the blouse front, I'm going to follow a similar process as for the butterfly sleeve. So I'll just show you why. This is the blouse front piece, and this diagonal line on the pattern piece, which is marked by perforations, that is the straight of the grain. The straight of the grain is not that. It's not like a normal blouse front. The straight of the grain is here at a diagonal, so the pattern piece will be laid out on a slight diagonal. The markings across it we can see here. There we are on the bodice. I think it's wise for me to do this on pattern paper and mark those lines out rather than trying to squint through perforations on the original pattern, and it's also good to conserve the original pattern. I have a real problem. I know what I need to do about it, but it would have been ideal if I'd had more fabric, because I'm not going to be able to get a full skirt. I just haven't got enough fabric. Actually, in original 30s and 40s, particularly wartime dresses, skirts can be very skimpy. As you can see, the skirt piece goes right up to kind of empire line bodice. It's very much not an unknown problem to run out of fabric for the dress you want to make. It happened to sewers in wartime all the time, and it's happened to me. There's hardly going to be a scrap left. I'm just piecing together all the scraps that I have to eke out a belt for the dress. With a skirt, you probably can't really see what I've done, but I've taken out so much of the fullness. I couldn't cut either the front or the back in one piece, so I got as much as I could, and then I used scraps of fabric to piece the top of the skirt. I haven't sewn it yet, just pinned there. I don't think it'll show it's such a busy fabric. I'll show you how much fabric I have left. That is all the fabric I have left. It took many hours to cut out because of not really having sufficient fabric for the dress, but then that's how it was in the 30s and 40s, wasn't it? I'm just going through a very similar challenge to what people went through then. A bit of a nightmare. The thread kept snapping, and I've re-threaded the machine, re-threaded the bobbin, snap, 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 and then I tested the thread. Now, this is pure silk thread that I bought a couple of months ago, and I was thinking it was going to be extra wonderful to sew early rayon and silk fabric with. So I actually was really organised, and I took my fabrics up to the specialist haberdashery and I bought all these silk threads and I tested them all and they all snap. Now, I did deserve that when I sewed these culottes and blouse with black cotton thread that I bought at a car boot sale. These culottes fell apart on me while I was out at the National Trust House. You can guess which seam ripped, can't you? Yes. Yes, the crotch seam. I've actually had to sew those culottes seam by seam a second time, but it was my own fault because I used very cheap cotton thread. This isn't my fault. I bought these expensive silk threads. Anyway, I shall persevere. Here is the back piece, which was cut on the fold, and we've just got darts at the waist seam and then little darts at the neck seam. Then the front pieces, which are this apparently rather strange shape, they have, I'll just show you, the shoulder seam there has 5 lines of gathering stitch, just ran from that edge round to just short of the seam, and that's on both sides obviously, but I wanted to show you how the front and back are joined together. So bought these, get rid of the back for a seckie, we've got these bits sticking up from the bodice, and that is because that is going to be the centre back seam. So the front of the blouse wraps round to the back, and then this is the back piece. Then with that centre back joined, that will then join round the back like that, and then we've got the gathered shoulders. Now it's really hard to see on this pattern fabric, isn't it? But to show you again, so that's joined there, the centre back seam, joined to the back piece, and then wraps round with the gathering here at the front. Oh yes, something else, because this is original rayon, it is slippy slidey, so piecing, this is just a moan, isn't it? I promise this video isn't going to be a moan from one end to the other. We hope. Quick little whinge out of the way. It's slippy sliding around the place, and of course the skirt is pieced, and when you piece fabric it's really important that it doesn't stretch, because if it stretches it's not going to lie flat where you've pieced the seams, so it's something of a challenge. And I'm just taking a moment to show you my latest vintage find, this little pretty gate leg table on wheels, which cost me a £5, and then I'm just trying out some of my vintage linens on it. They were £3 each. I mean, you can't go wrong, can you? And then my Singer 99K, which also cost a £5, although it then cost another £105 to get working again. So how to do the butterfly sleeve? You have got your gathering line from the top down to a marking here, which I've put tailor's tack to mark. Well, I've put several tailor tacks all along the line that I need to gather. You gather straight down the gathering line, and then also a row of gathering each side of that gathering line, about 1/4 of an inch away from the gathering line, and then that's going to just pull up. You pull it up to 3.5 inches, so you've got 3.5 inches here, and then you can see how that puff is going to be formed. And you also gather around the top part of the sleeve, so it's going to be really puffy. You can see how that works. It really is quite simple. So just to summarize, you've got your 3 rows of gathering, which you're going to pull up here to 3.5. You're going to gather around the top of the sleeve, and then obviously it's then joined at the sides here for this really puffy sleeve. done my 3 rows of gathering stitch, starting from the marking here 2/3 of the way down, and 3 rows of gathering stitch 1/4 of an inch apart, pulled that up and then stay stitched it. I just done a normal straight machine stitch either side of the gathering lines, so they're pulled up 3.5 inches, and then you stay stitch them at either end so that they don't fall apart. And then between the notches here, gather all the way around the top. So I'll show you the stages. So this is the sleeve gathered, 3 gathering rows pulled up and stay stitched at either end, and that is 3.5 inches long, that gathering there, and you can see, pull it up, forming that shape. And then the next stage is to run 2 rows of gathering stitch all the way around the top, and that's the sleeve starting to take shape with the gathering around the top. Obviously these are the edges that are going to be joined and then stitched onto the bodice. Now, one of my favourite parts of the whole sewing process, choosing a belt buckle. It's an excuse to go riveting through my vintage belt buckles. I mean, making a belt isn't my favourite thing. Turning it out, that can't be anyone's favourite thing. I don't imagine it is, but the choosing of the belt buckle, another story. So the butterfly sleeves are now attached to the bodice, and you can see how the crossover front is formed with the right folding over the left, and the facing is just, it's part of the pattern piece, part of the bodice front that just folds over and is turned under and then hand stitched. It's a self-facing that runs along each side of the bodice and around the neck. You can see there the right side of the bodice crossing over the left, and it's held in place by line of stitching where there's the front piece above the waistline, and the crossover front is then top stitched down to that. And I've done the traditional vintage opening with a combination of hooks and eyes and poppers or snaps, whatever you want to call them. As ever, putting the hooks and eyes in the area of greatest strain, and then the snaps or poppers just to hold the dress where it's a bit looser. And the belt buckle I chose was this one. It's just the right sort of slightly darker shade of green that goes with the daisies, and if I hold it up, if it focuses, you can just see it's got that rather pretty scalloped edge to it. having to hold the microphone because Pixie the dog got hold of it. So it's not what it was. Thank you very much for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed seeing me make the butterfly sleeve dress. If you would like to make your own butterfly sleeve dress, I have put my scribbled pattern piece on my Ko-fi page, and you will hopefully be able to download it from there. I say hopefully because this is my first time putting anything on the page, so you're by way of being guinea pigs. I think when you download it, you're asked to pay, but obviously it's free, so you just put in, I think, 0000, and it should allow you to download the pattern piece. And it really wasn't that difficult to make the butterfly sleeve, fancy as it looks. It was actually, in some ways, the easiest part of sewing the dress. I hope you will like my video, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.